Hey, everybody. If you have been tuning in periodically, I've been doing the Saturday and Sunday streams, or attempting to, just kind of as a fan stream around Scott Adams. Obviously, those of you who are Scott Adams watchers, you know all about that. And, or at least you know a little bit about that, a few of you. But I figured I'd keep this going. And what I'm trying to do really is, I'm definitely not going to be I'm doing my own thing. My initial idea was to contribute to the streamers that are out there, or the sippers that are out there. And I will continue that, but I'm not going to do the simultaneous sip. That's not a thing that I don't think I should be doing that, really. The little avatar blanket you see in the background, I'll probably change that over time too. But it's kind of fun because a lot of the things that I've, aspired to come from what I watched Scott Adams do for a long time as a, subscriber to his stream. But what I'm going to be doing now is a little bit different. My focus is really about, we always watch Scott struggle with the technology. And my role is technology. So for me to be able to provide some level of capability there is something that I've always wanted to be able to do. Now, because it is one of those things, anyways, the thing that I'm discovering is that there's all kinds of technology glitches that Scott always had to deal with and solve. And one of the things I'm trying to do right now is make sure that I'm able to do that. And then I'm going to share with you what those things are, because, it's not a trivial thing to get all of this stuff set up and working. It's actually kind of difficult when you first do it, because there's a lot to it. And what I'm doing right now, just to give you a little context as to why I'm looking down. I'm trying to get my live stream up on the phone. And the only reason is because one of the typical glitches or bugs that I see happening on a regular basis is the audio issues. So audio being, you hear an echo in the background. I don't know if that's happening right now. So until I actually listen to my own stream for a second, I'm not really sure if that's happening for you. So that's what I'm attempting to do right now, is just go to my stream that is live right now and see if I'm getting that echo. So let's see what comes up here. For a second, I'm not really sure if that's happening. Good. So that's what. So I got my question answered. This is kind of the the premise of what I'm going to try and help people with. It's you want to do something, right? You want to go out there and do a stream, or you want to do some kind of a technology thing. A lot of people, pardon me here. A lot of people will attempt to do a technological thing, and they struggle because it's complicated. It's not a trivial thing. Scott Adams used to say on his stream on a regular basis, if I can't just hit the button and it goes, it's not worth doing. It's too difficult, too many steps, too much fuss, things like that. So today, and in my efforts right now, I don't have chat in my, so this is just me straight up doing a conversation with you. I can play around with it a little bit and pull up. So I've got multiple screens on my desktop, and that helps to make it easier when you're trying to do something like this. So in order for me to do any kind of a chat, right now what I'm doing is I'm just opening the locals channel and going to my stream, and I'm going to mute it so that I'm not getting any background noise. But I want to enter the stream so that I can actually hear it. So it's muted, and now I've got the chat up. So, I've got two viewers right now. It's just me, and anybody watching this is probably going to be watching the recording later, simply because I don't have the audience at this stage to bring people into my live stream. But where I'm going with this is what my intentions are with this is to actually bring about some guidance on how to build your own setup so that you've got your all of the streaming steps in place. Now that's going to be just like a very short little set of things that I do. It's not going to be long term, because once you have your setup in place, then you can certainly take it from there. And I'm not going to just sit here and spend all my time doing a stream over and over again on how to set your stuff up or making recordings for that sort of thing. I'll try and be very explicit, make it very clear what I'm doing so that you don't have to guess very much. It becomes very easy to do. But once that's done, I'll put that chapter behind me and I'll be moving on to other topics. So, one of the big things that I like to dig into, there's a number of things, but I really enjoy digging into technology, AI specifically. And for me, AI is my career right now. Prior to this, I did cybersecurity. Prior to that, I did physical security, so camera systems, access control, door access, card systems. So I've got a lot of practical hands-on experience with building systems, building technical configurations, going into server rooms, racking systems, and then integrating them, and then getting all the software working together, and then getting all the cameras and all of the access control systems interoperating, because it's difficult sometimes to explain the level of integration that goes on. But to give you an idea, not the levels, forget that for a second. What I really mean is when you see like real world events, things that have happened in the past couple of years, and then you begin to understand some of the technology setups behind the scenes, it echoes, sort of like they say, it rhymes or it echoes. You have one event, and then that event recurs over and over again. And it's pattern based, right? Or at least we say that it is. I don't know if it's pattern based, but the pattern that I'm talking about here is COVID. And I'm going to say that because we developed I don't know if it was a choice, policy or whatever, but we developed a really, really big case of amnesia when it came to what we did about COVID. And I'm not talking about policy, government, or taking shots or medicine or anything like that. Forget that. What I'm talking about is we did this before. We did this back in 2002 to 2003. It was almost like a dry run for COVID. And I don't mean in a malicious way. So back in 2002, 2003, we had the SARS-1 epidemic. It didn't make as big a splash. We didn't have X, we didn't have, Twitter. We didn't have YouTube. We didn't have people getting out there in front of the camera on their own, like I'm doing right now, doing their own live streams or their own recordings, telling you throughout the world what a scary event is going on. So when SARS happened, the telltales, you heard a little bit about it in the news, but the telltales were, getting on an airplane and seeing somebody wearing a mask. Specifically, in my case, I only observed Asian people wearing a mask on a plane. It just, it seemed a little odd. And I remembered seeing, it was kind of funny because they had masks that had camouflage patterns on them. It was just to be a little more, just unique. It was no different than the mask thing that we did in COVID, where people made masks and things like that for the PPE support that we did with COVID. But I was in physical security back then. And one of the really cool things that we did was we created these things called man traps. And we were designing this. The company that I worked for, I was supporting and helping architect some of these systems. mostly in a technical support capacity because the dealers of the products were out there doing the real design. But ultimately, when it came to integrating all the parts, the dealers had to come to us to get the design integration pieces. So we had what we called man traps, or what the companies out there that were building these were calling them man traps. You see a man trap every single time you go to a mall, and there's a set of doors on the outside and a set of doors on the inside. Now, it's not really a man trap. That's really just for it's like an airlock. It's to make sure that the outside air doesn't just absolutely flow into a building, or all of the heat flow out of the building the minute you open the door. So that's kind of really about atmosphere. But the idea is it's an airlock, right? And as an airlock, one of the other things that you would have with an airlock is the ability to close one side and open the other side, or lock both. And in the SARS epidemic, what we set up was a man trap system that had manual control, so that somebody in a guard booth, very similar to what you might see in some countries for their customs. When you come in, you go into a door, and then inside that little booth area, there's a window on the side, and you're looking out at that person who's in another booth, and they're totally isolated from you, and there's a speaker between you so that they can talk to you, and they're just interrogating you potentially. Why did you come to our country? What's your business here? Things like that. Well, the SARS man traps actually were very different. Their primary focus was to figure out, do you have a fever before you walked in? So you would come in the first door, and above the second door was a set of cameras. And those cameras would be looking at you and looking at your body, and they had an infrared sensor that could tell whether you had a fever or not. This is back in 2002, 2003. And if you did not have a fever, then potentially the secondary door would open, and or it would have a manual lock, and the person would release you so you could go back out, rather than dealing with that. And then there were some more complicated systems where you had a triaging. If you had a temperature, you went through one door. If you didn't have a fever, you went through the other door. And so the idea was dealing with the illness at a very efficient way and safe way, because you weren't putting yourself into harm's way to get infected if the person inside that door or inside that man trap actually had a fever and might get you sick as a person letting people in or out of the building. Now, that was 2002, 2003. And then somehow, I'm sure the companies that I talked to back in the day when I was doing that work, they probably were doing it again during COVID. But I didn't hear anything about it. It was kind of interesting because during SARS, I remember hearing about how the insurance companies like Fidelity, companies like the banks and things like that, they were out there building these man traps. And I don't recall if any of them were ever implemented, but I do know that we talked about the design of them and everything. We tested everything out and it worked fine in 2002, 2003. And then I do remember briefly seeing one advertisement for a man trap system that had temperature sensors built into the interior door. Again, just one time. It was brief. It was really quick. And I never, didn't really become popular. These things aren't cheap, right? It's probably $50,000 per door to put one of these things in. So the whole idea, though, is in order for that system to work, you had to have a physical security access control system that controlled the doors, right? Open, close, lock, unlock. And then you had to have an integrated camera system so that you could have the temperature sensor. And then inside the camera system, you had to have enough AI to be able to interpret the video and look at it and determine, am I seeing a temperature over 100 degrees or 102 degrees for the person inside this man trap? And then if I have a condition that says, if the temperature is above 100, then don't let them in. If it's 100 or below, let them in, right? So that logic had to exist on the camera system. And then the camera system would send an alert back to the access control system to say, unlock the door, lock the door, whatever, or send them back out. So all of this stuff is, it's a step-by-step thing. You have to build the full access control system first, design it, set it up, build it, make it work, test it. Then you have to build the camera system, design it, build it, set it up, test it, and then integrate the two and make sure that the two work together, right? So this is the exact same scenario when you're trying to set yourself up for something like streaming. The first thing that you're going to want to do is figure out what is your streaming platform. And I'm using Rumble Studio, for example, to push out the streams to the different platforms. So I'm pushing out to Locals, X, Rumble, and YouTube all at the same time. So my stream is showing up live in all of those locations. Secondarily, I need to be able to control my camera, because in a minute here, I'm going to actually jump into talking about NotebookLM in this process, because I'm going to talk about how I'm setting up my actual process for this show. And in time, I'll make this a little bit more explicit, and it'll come across with all of the pieces in one place. But the idea is that my secondary tool, the Rumble Studio, doesn't have the ability to do these type of transitions inside the video stream. So I'm using OBS to be able to have scenes. So scene one is I'm just sitting in front of my camera, and I've got a background, just a simple background that has the blanket, as you see. And then the second part is I'm going to display an application. In this case, it's NotebookLM, and I have my picture off to the side. So, and that's pretty easy to do. It's not really a difficult task to set up once you have it set up. But the idea is that you want to be able to have these transitions during your process, so that it's very easy to transition from one thing to the next. And over time, I'm going to enhance this so I can actually put the chat up on a side over here, and maybe on the other side I'll have little tidbits of things going on that might help people who are watching have a clue of where I'm headed next. Maybe an outline or something like that. So, and then by the way, the other one. Right now, I'm pointing to my right. To you, it looks like I'm pointing to my left. So I want to mirror my image, right? But you'll notice if I go down here to this other one, I have my mirroring in place. So when I point over here, I'm actually pointing at the image of what I want to talk about. So if I were to go, hey, over here is the bullet list, that kind of thing, it would look like I'm pointing in the right direction. But when I come back here to my general scene, I haven't changed that yet. So if I actually had the chat up on the right, it would look like I'm pointing to my left. And that's kind of confusing when you're actually streaming, because, I'd like to be able to put my right hand up and not look like I'm pointing to the left. So these are little tidbits and nuances that you have to do. And so right now, what I'm going to do is I'm in OBS on my desktop. Let's see if the desktop will show. No, okay, that's not going to work yet. So I was going to show you my OBS setup, and I'll do that later. Maybe I'll insert a clip into a video that I'm going to make from this that I'll publish. But all I'm doing here now is I'm going into the filters for my camera. And when I do that, I'm going to modify the camera setup so that it mirrors. I'll do that at another time, because actually it's not that easy. It's not quite the steps that I'm about to bring in. But anyways, that's the type of thing that we'll talk about in future as I develop the content for this stream. But to begin with, that gives you a kind of a background around some of the things that I'm working on technically to make the stream production easier. Second part of what I'm going to do is talk about the content, right? So I'm talking off the cuff, because I know what I'm talking about. I have the agenda in my head. I don't have it on screen. I don't have any outline or anything like that right now. But in the future, it would make a whole lot of sense to have that outline. So on the earlier Coffee with Scott Adams stream I was watching, Erica was there making transitions by saying, hey, we're up to this period of time. Let's change topics. And, that's a perfect thing to have somebody else manage, because you get caught up in your own thinking, and maybe you are not sure if you made your point, and you need to be able to end that conversation and move to the next point. My first couple of attempts at this, I was just rambling, and I couldn't keep myself on track with transitioning from one topic to the next. Even in this one, I probably went down rabbit holes in what I've already talked about. And, I'll have to, when I do this as a produced video later, I'll trim that down and put a beginning and an end. And I might even insert little clips to say, well, I opened this topic over here, I never finished it. So in order to make sure that I have a succinct start and finish to each little topic or each little section, so that you don't come in here going, well, he threw that ball in the air, I never saw it come down. You never caught it, and if you're juggling a stream or an event like this, if you're doing it live, and this is I really like the idea of the live streams, and in part because of the example set by Scott, but also because there's something visceral to that. When you're recording, it's kind of mundane sometimes. It can be very difficult to stay focused or to feel like you're, it's a project. You do like one little piece and then you pop that recording in. Now, if you have a director or you have some directorial mind, then making those videos is not that difficult. But if you don't have that, then the live stream element is much more conversational. Makes it easier to feel like you're actually talking to somebody. And when I have the chat up and it's working, that's going to be a lot easier. Because then the audience can prompt some of the directions that I would go in when I'm talking. In the short run, because at the moment I don't really have a full-blown audience, what I'm going to really be focused on is using these live streams to walk through some topic matter and collateral that will help me to understand when to transition, make sure I completed a point, and move on to the next one. So I'm going to make that transition now, and that transition is going to be a scene change in OBS so that I can step out of the full screen and bring up this product called NotebookLM. Now, NotebookLM is a great, I had no idea how incredible this tool was before I started working on these streams, because working on a stream when you're just, like I said, off the cuff rambling, you don't have a process in place to know when to start and stop different topics and things like that. You need some kind of direction. And one of the first things that I struggled with on Saturday and the first couple of days that I did this was I didn't have like Owen Gregorian feeding me news. So I could actually say, or having a list of things that I could go gather the news from and then print it out the way Scott did, where he had his papers and he would just kind of work through the bullets on his papers so that he knew he was transitioning at an appropriate time. I don't think he had date timestamps. I think he'd say his piece on it and then say, okay, next, right? And Scott's really good at very, very concise, detailed blocks of content. And I believe that's because of the nature of what he did, which was comic strips. So for him, he would probably have a three frame concept in his head for each individual topic that he was going to talk about. And the only way to make a comic strip like that in 3 frames work out is you have to have introduce, conflict, resolution, all like ready to go. And in the case of humor, he has his 6 steps to humor, which I'm going to go back and study more now. Not so much for the humor. I mean, maybe I'll aspire to have a chuckle in one of my, create a little joke here and there. But it's really more about being able to deliver that content in a very, very concise, short burst. That because nobody's going to wait around for the punchline if you took 10 minutes to get there. Well, that's the exact same thing when you're presenting. If you're going to try and hit a topic, you need to be able to get through those stages very quickly and be very concise each time and really know that you hit the punchline, as it were, for the topic you're introducing. So that said, let's go over to talking about this. And I'm going to modify this scene just a little bit, I think. No, it's good. I wasn't sure, but I thought I was actually covering some of the content. So that said, in the content that you are seeing, you've got me on one side and you've got the content on the other, and the content's on the right for a change. So when I point to the right, it's actually, I'm pointing at the content because I mirrored this image. Now I'm going to go into the pod prep item because pod prep is what I'm doing when I set up for this podcast. Now, I'm going to step out of that for a second too, because what I really want to do here is go over to, I use multiple services in this process. It's not one thing, it's multiple things. So let me just switch this to desktop share. There we go. So now in the desktop share, what you're seeing here is I use Grok because Grok gives me access to all of the, it gives me access to all of the, what do you call it, accounts that Scott mentioned as to where he gets his news. So he said, hey, let's actually, if you want to find something out, you probably want to go to Owen Gregorian, Cernovich, all of these other folks that are out there that actually have news to talk about. So I created a task in Grok, and you can only do this to get Twitter feed or Grok feed content. You have to do it in Grok. So I have a subscription to X, which gives me an upgraded version of Grok. So I've got Super Grok. And I created this prompt, which is basically, it's a real simple thing, but I took all of those suggested accounts that Scott pointed out early on, and I said, get me today's news from all of those sources. So I'm going to run this right now, and it'll take a few minutes to process. But when it is finished, I'm going to show you my next step, which is how I'm going to bring that over into NotebookLM to use it as content for what I'm going to talk about in my stream. So this is, the behind the scenes part is what you're seeing right now. And then the next step is going to be how I use that in stream production to get ready for the stream. So this should, I'm not sure how long it's going to take, but it'll probably take somewhere around a minute and a half to complete doing all of the research that I'm asking it to go through. And what I'll do in the interest of time is I will show you last night's rather than waiting for it to come through, because that task may take a while. So let me just put that off to the side. And what I did is once I got that content out of the task in Grok, I'm bringing it over into NotebookLM. And when you are creating something in NotebookLM, you then actually have to create a source. Oh, and you know what? The content just came up, so I'll use it instead of going the other way, instead of using the old content from last night. So, and the reason I wanted to do that is because today's content is actually relevant to what happened at Davos and the World Economic Forum and Trump's talk there, and the other folks that also talked there. So I'm just copying that content, and I'm going to move this off to another screen, get rid of it for now. And now I'm going to go to, I'm going to move back to my NotebookLM, and I'll actually leave it up larger so you can see the whole thing. So I have a Trump era the previous item was a Trump era summary. Now, what I really want to do is I want to incorporate the new one. So each time you transition, you go into something and you transition back. In NotebookLM, it's this little, I can collapse the panel, but that's not what I want to do here. If I open an item, when I open the item and I want to get back to the list, I collapse it and it gets back to the list. Now, what I really want to do here is delete the last one. So I'm just going to remove the source, and then I'm going to add a new source. And I'm going to use copied text because I have it on my clipboard. And I'm going to insert that in as a source. So now that I've done that, let me show you some of the other sources that I have here. So I actually have a prompt in the background that I created. That was when I built the list of all of the different things that I was looking for. So I'm going to take this and I'm copying this because I just want to use it. This is my prompt. It's like in the memory by having it over there. And collapse that. And I'm going to uncheck it because I don't really need this. I'm not researching this. I'm researching this, which is the content that I just put in from the other side. And I also want to show you this. So this is an article that came from a Medium post out there. So it gets into the details of all of the different persuasion techniques. And I find this super useful when I'm actually trying to run this prompt. So now the second thing is, how do I run the prompt? So I've got the chat, and I want to take the chat and I'm going to clean it up because this is last night's, okay? So I'm going to delete that. Now at the bottom, I'm going to paste in, remember I copied the prompt from the clipboard, and I'm going to put it in, okay? Now you can see what this prompt says. Create a provocative headline, creating a title using a format similar. So this is called, what do you call it again? There's a term that I'm looking for in order to give an example to the AI. I'll remember the example later, but I'll just go forward. The idea is that you want to give it a couple of examples of what you're looking for in order to get the prompt to generate the content in the format you want, and with an example so that it uses that as kind of a template. And then what am I looking for? I want a provocative headline. I want to identify current events and possible hoaxes and use the two movies with one screen to possibly explain that. And then use the Dilbert filter, which is out there as content or as an example as well, so that I can say, what are people doing? Is it competency or conspiracy, right? Or incompetence versus conspiracy. So those are the two first items that I want. And then the fourth item here is I want the system to go through that 78 persuasion techniques and look at all of the content that I just gathered in this news article and identify for me all of those persuasion elements. So let's run that, and it'll run in the background. Once that's done, it's actually going to create a block of content that I could use here in my stream if I want to talk through it. There's a couple of other things, though, that are just absolutely mind-blowing from my perspective. So these tools, because I just explained this process earlier today, as a matter of fact, on X, Cernovich pointed out, hey, don't just use X. You've got to be able to understand what you're presenting. Not just what you're presenting, you have to be able to understand what it is you're seeking or what you're trying to do before you use AI. And that's critically important because and I'm going to bring this over so you can see it. So this is the post Cernovich said, don't use AI right away. And so I agree with this so wholeheartedly, it's not funny. When we talked about that whole man-trap process earlier, you had to understand what the objective was before you could automate it. So you have to know why, what are you going to do to detect the presence of a sick person? Well, we know that from a physician standpoint, that if their body temperature is over 100 degrees, then we know that there's a likelihood that they're sick. So then I could automate that process by using a camera in the man trap with an AI that actually detected the temperature and gave us an alert condition that said, don't let them in, right? That whole process could not be automated if I didn't understand the idea behind what tells me that somebody's sick, right? So you have to have that, and then what to do if they are, right? The step-by-step process. So you really need to understand the process you're trying to automate before you go out and automate it. So that's what we're doing here. I know what I'm trying to do. I want a provocative headline. So this is going to become that 3-frame comic strip that Scott was talking about at some point, which is going to say, give me the intro to my content, give me the dilemma, and then give me the outcome, right? These are going to be things that down the line I'll do. So here's our provocative headline for today's episode: the Golden Dome, taxing condoms, and the $8 million scam. Now, I don't really know exactly where all of this is going to go. I haven't read through this. So what can I do to get a handle on this real quick without actually reading through all of this so I can actually talk to you about this on the fly? I'm going to do the mind map. Now, the mind map, it'll take a minute or so. The mind map is going to give me a visual guide to the content that we're looking at here. And let's take a look at that. So now we have persuasion and global events. First, I just want to look at what happened at Davos. So I'll go here to the national defense, and there's the Greenland acquisition and the Golden Dome shield. So if I go to the Greenland acquisition, this will generate a quick summary of what happened in the Greenland acquisition. What did Trump say? What did the world say? How did they react? So we're going to get that information up front here. And it's very interesting to see how this plays out. So now, here's what we have: the strategic rationale behind the Golden Dome, the necessity. So Trump is saying it utilizes maps to demonstrate Greenland's strategic importance. So he must have done a visual. I didn't see it yet. So, but it explains why. I mean, it's literally the land between Russia, China, and the United States, and that North Korea as well as North Korea, and that it's essentially the Arctic flank. It's the border between all of those countries. When we look at it on a typical Cartesian map, Greenland looks like it's just this thing that sticks down from the North Pole between Europe and maybe the front side of Russia or the eastern side of Russia. But the reality is it actually is the border that goes between the entire continent of Russia. There's an exposure for for about 80% of Greenland is exposed to about 80% of the northern border of Russia, which makes it strategically very important for all of us, especially when you start thinking about lobbing missiles. Hopefully we never have to get to that. I pray to God that doesn't happen for all of us. But that said, you want to be able to understand why, the Golden Dome is not going to just protect, United States. It is essential, but it's going to be anytime somebody lobs missiles like that, they're probably going over a pole to get wherever they want to go, or they're going across chunks of the northern hemisphere to get where they want to go. As a result, Greenland is perfectly positioned to take those missiles down, and that would include protecting Europe, and that would include protecting China, North Korea, Japan, all of those countries. So it certainly makes sense that, if somebody's going to attempt to support the common good, and that's not just the common good for the United States, but for all countries, then that type of thing has to happen. And then you can see some of the things that were brought into the framing here. It's essential for U.S. military defense, or, for us, but it absolutely is, going to be important for the others. So we have Trump building the first frame, which is, here's what the problem is. Here's a picture. And then the necessity is it's essential to that strategy that we have for missile defense. And then thirdly, this also brings in some conflict, which is that in order for us to have a missile defense strategy like that, we would have to actually have access to that place. And I'm sure that is going to develop some level of conflict related to who owns Greenland and things like that. And then if we have organizations who want to support it or fight it, Trump is doing what Trump does, which is opening with the largest, most potent argument that he can make, putting a tariff, right? And there's probably other aspects, but tariffs are certainly the lesser damaging thing than putting troops somewhere. So, and then the anchoring is that nobody's saying that the United States wants to just put troops somewhere and take over, that they're willing to buy or they're willing to make it a win-win for multiple sides. So that's an interesting perspective. Now let's look at the two movies idea, and that is that the two movies on one screen. The Defense Hawk, that's Steve Cortez, Mario Naufal, saying that there's a masterstroke here, that security and prosperity for the Western Hemisphere comes out of the Golden Dome. And that's the one items. Then the skeptics, right? There's another perspective. Opponents of this view this move as an absurd distraction. Gavin Newsom actually downplays it, using words, by the way, to call it boring and insignificant, to make you, take a position on that. And this is, at this stage, what I'm really talking about here is that persuasion context. And we'll just also go to the Golden Dome missile shield real quick and see how that comes out in this topic. I'm not gonna go through all of this. I'm just really doing some of this as an example of how effective this NotebookLM is in pod preparation and real-time live broadcasting, even though, without preparation, I've got the ability to come in here and provide really good discussion points and arguments related to it. Now, again, I'm not going to go through this, but the idea is it's a respin of the previous, but very specific to the Golden Dome. So you can see how we just navigated our way through a topic in a matter of seconds just by having that mind map capability. Now, the next item, I'm going to run this in the background. That's going to take a few minutes, and I'm not going to go through the reports. The reports are actually great. Well, no, I did it already. No, that's the 11 hours ago. So the reports, though, what this does is it creates a high-level report, which you could ingest minutes before your presentation if you really wanted to be deep on some of these topics. And that's fantastic. You can get a detailed report. There's a whole bunch of different ways to go with that. The slide deck is beautiful, and also the infographic. So one of these will probably come up quickly. The other one's going to take a few minutes. But if you do these, if you actually run these right before you start your stream, these can be sitting there in the background and ready to go for you. Now, what if I want to make sure I only have a 2-minute discourse on the news, and I don't really want to go, or a 5-minute discourse on the news? I don't really want to get into a whole 10, 20-minute, 30-minute breakdown as I started to do, because that would bore people, take them, somebody's going to say, that's enough of that. I don't really want to hear it anymore. So, and that's fine, but how do you control that when you're doing a live stream with no Erica to say, stop, move to the next topic, right? So you can use something like the video overview to do that. Now I'm going to give you an example of that. I've got a previous one here. Let's use the art of persuasion. So while these other things are still running in the background, I don't even have to worry about them. I can bring this up. Now, this is actually really amazing. So I'm going to watch this with you. So I'm going to transition, and then I'm going to put this.
Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to dive into something that's all around us, shaping our world in ways we don't even notice. The art of persuasion. It's this powerful, almost invisible force that guides our decisions, our conversations, pretty much our entire lives.
So let me ask you this. You ever been in an argument where you know you're right?
Now, I'm not going to just play the whole thing, but if I wanted to have a 6-minute interlude to get the Davos news, I could totally use that. And the other part that's really nice about it is by bringing that piece in, a video like this in that was AI generated, I don't have to come down as a left or a right-leaning person, because I'm not. I'm actually kind of an outside observer to a degree. I take part and I certainly vote, but I'm not negative on everything left, and I'm not negative on everything right. And I'm certainly not positive for either as well. I think that you can go too far on both sides very easily. And a lot of what we care about is somewhere in the middle anyways. So the problem I have, obviously, and everybody has, is when you have an echo chamber that is so entrenched on one side or the other. If you take a strong look at the religious right, they're going to frame everything in context of their religion, and it's going to be because God said it, or because Jesus said it, or because, and so it can, for anybody who doesn't ascribe to that part of their ideology, you're going to get turned off. I mean, people, if the minute I start talking about God, I could probably, if I go back and watch my videos, I bet you I can watch that segment go down. On the other side, you have the left, who's talking about ideologies that might be related to the LGBTQ or the woke or whatever it might be, or just anti-Trump, right? Trump derangement syndrome. Any of those things could also get to a point where anybody that's on the right, you're going to hear you start bringing that stuff up and go, I don't want to, just get me out of here. So, but I want to know what each one of those things have to say and inform, because they're not audiences, but they're points, ideologies out there that influence the middle. And the middle part is really where I kind of think of it as where the work gets done. It's if any policy is going to happen, you have somebody on the far, far right or the far, far left throwing that in. The only way it gets passed is if somebody on the very far left, if it's a left policy, is there to push it, right? And for example, I know that there were some very leftist policies that were recently passed by the state of Virginia around voting, basically taking it as far to the left as you could go, saying it has to be electronic, no paper ballots, no ID, like New York and California have done. And when I lived in California, I went and voted. I remember I put out my ID and I said, put that away or you'll get arrested. It was the craziest thing. And I did it because I had voted in another state prior, that when I lived in the other state where that was part of the process. You put your ID down as part of your process. And it was normal. I thought it was the right thing to do. And they literally told me to put my license away or they would have to eject me. It was weird. I'd never experienced that. Now, I don't know if they would have really rejected me. Who knows? But anyways, the idea with this, to keep you on track and keep you in a timeline and make sure that you can stay in a neutral zone if you want to, you can actually create your prompt that actually creates the video that is going to stay within the bounds. I can say, don't go too far left, don't go too far right. Give me the facts and the details. Go for absolute veracity. I'm looking for the truth. I'm not looking for any kind of narrative. I want to break the narratives out of what I'm talking about. And that's really what this tool allows you to do.
You really can't.
It gives you the ability to have this, this would be a 6-minute video.
Simple.
Let it play the whole way through. And you can certainly take a look at it. I think I recorded this on a previous video and left it out there. But, the power of being able to do that in minutes, it's just mind-blowing. Now, let's take a look at the persuasion toolbox. This is an infographic that I created. Now, if persuasion was the topic I was talking about, we'll have the video overview here in a slide deck in a few minutes. I didn't create an infographic for today's topic, but I'll show you the infographic for the persuasion toolbox. And this all comes about because of what I was talking about prior. So there's multiple iterations of this that I've seen that I generated. So you've got the fake because, which is what I talked about on Sunday, which is how I even discovered this capability. It gives you the ability to just say, I'm going to take action because. And that's, Scott's passing and knowing that people might be interested in having something like what I'm producing right now as an optional thing to learn or go join and listen in on. That is the fake because that I needed to get myself moving in this direction and actually start making things happen. So, right now, like I said, I know I don't have a very big audience, and that's okay. If I start, as time goes on, I hope I'll get feedback or I'll see through things that were interesting to people. They'll jump in and join these events. So there was a set of tools that were created by the 78 rules of persuasion plus Scott's persuasion and Dilbert filter that came out of the sources that I enabled when I created this, that created this infographic. And this is great because you could use this as like as a matter of fact, I think if you look back at my X videos, that I used one of these infographics as the thumbnail for the video. And I'm going to experiment with that next, is let the, create the content, what I'm going to talk about, create the kind of the flow of the talk through the mind map, and then have another prompt that says, based on what I just, what I've set myself up with, create a thumbnail with the infographic and have a prompt that describes the thumbnail based on the content. And then it'll come up with something like this that ideally would be, covering all of that content. And then maybe I could just superimpose a picture over the top of it to make it a very viable thumbnail. So that's like just tools in the arsenal that you have. And that's what this is. This is an arsenal. This is an absolute arsenal of things that you have at your disposal when you're trying to do a stream, and making it super easy to prep, get ready, and then actually talk through your process. So whether or not you would have this up and in front of people doesn't matter. But in my case, I'm using it as the background so you can see how to use a tool like this for yourself. And what is the price behind all of it? I don't think you have to, for tasks, I don't think you have to be a subscriber to use tasks in Grok. But you're going to have a limitation. You're only going to be able to do so much or so many iterations before it runs out. That could be once a day task. I think you can have two on the free. You can have 2 free tasks that run on a daily basis. Because I'm on the Super Grok, I get like 100. So I can have all of these different tasks and use them in different information flows for what I'm doing. The second item is I went out and I bought a Google One subscription, which gives me access to AI and all of the AI tools. And that's $20 a month. And because I was able to get it on a promo, I got the first 3 months for $10 a month. So basically it's an annual there as well. Actually, the Google one is not annual. It's a monthly regardless. And I'm getting charged $10 a month for the base, which or for the promo period. And then after that, I've got the $20 a month. That gives me access to NotebookLM. NotebookLM you can use, again, for free, but I get better. It's like if I keep running these video overviews or I keep running infographics or whatever, I'm going to run up against a limitation. So when I was experimenting with this, I went through, like 10 iterations of running the infographic. And I ran up against the ceiling. It said, you've met your limit of infographics for the day. If you're trying to build something iteratively and you want to tweak your prompt to get a different result, you're going to have to do this 10, 20, 30 times sometimes. But since it only takes a minute or two to do, and you don't have to be sitting there lording over it while it does it, it can run in the background while you do something else. you want to have that multiple iteration option. So that's why I bought my subscription yesterday for that as well. And then, the other thing that I did is I was looking at the Rumble Studio. And, I love Rumble as a tool, but I'm not a Rumble streamer per se. I'm doing streaming on all the platforms, and I'm not trying to limit myself to Rumble or YouTube or X. So I wanted to be able to do all of them. And that means that I have to have the sources. So I'm going to go back to my shared desktop real quick. And now you can see this is my Rumble instance. And I'm not sure if I think my Rumble page is actually way bigger than Canvas. No, it's not. It's okay. There, okay. No, it sure is actually. So I want to bring this down. I want to size it so that when I show you something on the screen, you're going to see the whole screen. There we go. So now you can see what I've set up, and it's difficult. I'm doing this on the fly, and so I'm not able to see the video capture coming up where I expect it to be either. So let's turn that on and see if it's, yeah. Okay. So, oh yeah, you can see me in the bottom right corner. That's fine. I wasn't sure, but I wanted to make sure that you could see in the background what I'm pointing out up here in the top right. And that is that I've got the Rumble stream, the local stream, the YouTube stream, and the X stream all going at once. And that I'm using, OBS in the background to control all of this. And at the moment, I'm using that. I usually put this up top on my screen above. It's actually on another screen so that I'm looking at myself. Because right now, in order for me to see this, I'm looking down at another screen. But what I have on top is a teleprompter so that when I'm looking at the picture of myself and I'm looking at the frame of the stream that I've got in front of me, I can actually see what's going on. So this is what I was adjusting up above. And one funny little thing about teleprompters is they're much smaller screens. It's like a 12-inch screen, 10-inch screen, something like that. And when you're trying to see something that you're displaying up on that screen, which is, I want to look at the camera so that I connect with you a little bit when I'm talking to you. And I need to put the content that I'm talking to up there as well. Well, it's itty bitty and tiny, right? What I really need is a 32-inch or a 60-inch teleprompter where I can see what I'm actually moving my mouse over in, big enough that I can read the text, without putting my glasses on and getting right in front of it. So that's what I was struggling with, is I was moving this frame around. And for you, the minute I move this out of focus, you can see that you're not seeing exactly what I'm seeing, right? The gray bars on the right tell me that I just went off frame. You are seeing everything in this box, including my image down here in the bottom right and the images in the center. So in order for me to read that, you can see how small that even looks on the screen. Just imagine I'm looking at my teleprompter that looks like this tiny little frame inside. That's what it looks like on my monitor on top. But down here on the big screen, now it's huge. I can see everything and I can read it. So that's why I'm using the teleprompters to make sure that I can see what you're seeing, or actually I should say talk to you as I look at what I'm presenting. So when I put OBS on top in that teleprompter, it gives me the ability to see what's going on. And there, now we're going to move it up. Your stream, I'm seeing the echo of it down below. But when I do this, my purpose behind all of it is just to kind of orient you on the different pieces that I'm doing. The way that this all works is to take each individual piece, the OBS. And what I was getting to, by the way, in OBS is you'll notice in the top left of my screen, there's no, up here, I don't know if my mouse is showing. Yeah, it's not. So when you actually have the OBS stream running, traditionally, if you have a free version of it, you're going to have the OBS logo up here in the top left. You have no choice; it's there. I wanted to have it in where I can just not have any logo, so that it doesn't distract from what I'm doing. And again, also, I don't want to be branded as a Rumble streamer. I'm streaming on all the platforms, so that's why that comes up. So, in order to kind of be timely here, I know that I'm right at the 12:01 mark, so I'm going to wrap up here and come back to the just me talking for a second. If this was useful to you, you can watch this in a video later if you haven't had the opportunity to sign in on stream. But I'm going to try and do a live stream on this pretty frequently, and I hope that you would be interested in the content and come join me. And also, you can make comments on the content either on X, in Locals, or over on YouTube. I'm going to monitor all of the feeds or all of the commentary areas for all three of those. And that way you can give me a heads up as to what you liked about what I'm doing, what you didn't like, and if there's specific areas you want to talk about or you'd like me to talk about in the future. So, and the best part is you understand the flow now of if you give me a topic, I'm going to use these tools to take it, iterate it through getting it presentable, so that I can actually come to you and give you a presentation that you get something out of, I hope, and enjoy.